Okay then. So again, we want to give thanks and praise to the Most High. Give thanks for our parents. Because the righteous way went for our parents, we wouldn't be here right now. I don't think anybody can argue with me about that. So, Ched, we're going straight to the chase, you know, because last week you did come with some serious reasoning and man reason and, you know, open up some cans of worms. So, what we're up on the agenda now, my brother?
Well, yes, I mean, we're going to extend really from last week. Last week, as I mentioned last week, it was more of a introduction, even though it was really deep. And people were saying, "What introduction?" Yeah, it was introduction, but we need to go back to really understanding what is the saku, the psychology of the soul, the saku is the ka is the soul or the spirit in ancient Egypt, and the sa means female.
So can I just slow you down here? Can you just say those words again for those of us who don't know the terminology?
Saku.
Saku. Where does that come from?
So saku comes from ancient Egypt.
Ancient Egypt.
It's
how are you spelling that?
Let me get it from here.
Because I've got certain people are taking notes, you see.
It's S-A-K. So S-A is the sa, which is the female, the feminine aspect, and the ku, which is the soul, or should I say the spirit.
And the Ku, how are you spelling the Ku?
K-H-U.
K-H-U. Yeah. So it's S-A for Sa,
yeah.
K-H-U for Ku. Okay. Fine. Yeah.
So, and a Sakushetian is somebody who basically gains a deeper understanding of the spirit. Like, you know, we use the word psychologist here, you know what I'm saying? Really, from our ancient perspective, is a Sakushetian or a Sakushetian, basically. So
you said
Sakusheti
is
one who is the deep and profound and penetrating search, study and understanding and mastery of the illumination of the human spirit.
And that's the Egypt, yeah?
Yes.
Can you say that one more time?
Is Sakusheti or Sakushetian is the person, is the one who does that.
And you just hear what you just said, Sakusheti, psychology. It's the same sound.
Same sound.
Thank
exactly.
you.
Because when we're looking at phonetics and connotation, it sounds like that. It is like that. So the energies, they've taken that original energy of that word and created psychology.
Boy, it's just music to the ears, as I often say. Music to the ear. But I want to touch the whole thing about the straw man, because I know in a minute we do have the wordsmith man inside the house. And hey, Bridger, it comes so late. Huh?
Well, I'm supposed to meet critters up to now. The man ain't turned up yet, you know. He ain't turned up yet, you know. So. He's bringing his bread. I got somebody supposed to meet him as well. He said he's supposed to meet something. So the two of them's coming down there as well. So I don't know who's going to come down with him still, you know.
Yeah, but this is why you choked me, you know. You let me laugh, man. Look, hold on. Critters, two of them coming down?
Yeah, Critters is coming down. Some pasta, I say.
Oh, pasta?
Pasta Dutchy or something like that.
Anyway.
On the left-hand side,
Anyway. So, what I want to jump in pants and
well, I think he's already given my P45 for Sunday already. With that bird out of the straw, man, yeah, I think he's already. I'm going to be sitting down and listening to it. My man.
No, you're going to read the thing about the straw man?
I'll leave that for the Sunday, you know. Yeah. But my man's already doing such a big demonstration of the straw man already.
The word really, if you
it's not really an old definition. It's like a new concept. So it's not. So it's not really. It'd be me just playing with this, like they say, semantics. I'll be playing with the meanings because it's not really an old meaning to it. But what I'll do, especially on Sunday, I'll break down how the law has been put together.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I'll do. And I'll do that. I'll do some of that on this show. There's a system how this thing's been constructed.
Okay, fair enough. But
that's basic. But it's the same thing.
Yeah. Okay then. So We do have the great man, the scholar. I have to call him a scholar still because the man has done a whole heap of research, studying, and he must sit in the high roller chair inside his PSA, you know what I mean? And I think, Jeremy, I think you get sacked, you know? Yeah. You're P45, you know? So, you know?
I should never give him a copy of the book because he heard that he's the old knowledge, you know, and now he's coming back now, and I'm learning from my man.
Yeah, man.
It's like, you know, the old Kung Fu film when you have the old master and he teach the pupil, next thing the pupil's beating up the master. So big it up, shit every time, yeah?
Yeah, man, you have to big him every time. But I mean, we appreciate it because you are a diamond among us, my brother, because you put the work in, you know, and...
Thank you, brother.
And see, the thing is this, right? You know, you're in school and you're queuing up for your school dinners. For there's a queue,
that's right.
Like, if you push in, when the queue bus go to the back.
That's to the back,
right? Brother, you've queued up. Right, and your time has come now. Okay. So we have to honour you, my brother.
Okay, thank you, brother.
At this moment now, you know. And
I thought you were talking about me. You got on me now.
No, man, your critics are afraid, man. I'm worried about, man. You know what I mean? I think so.
Doggy Monster Show.
So the question I'm going to ask you now, right? Because we did ask about the way forward in terms of how do we present this? Because my main concern now is that how do we get through to people? Because one thing we were talking about earlier on, I feel we need to have our own institution, right? You know, and you just say it starts from home. So home is
institution itself.
You see what I'm saying?
So yeah, it starts from. I mean, obviously, it starts from home. So that's the first point. Cool. Then it branches out.
Yeah.
From the home, you know, you teach your immediate family, then you expand it to your extended family. Those who want to listen, you have to be careful. Some of them will, you know, want to beat you down for it. But because there's cognitive dissonance going on, I'm saying and then you expand it. Then you hold, you know, you can start holding meetings. Like inner circle meetings, because you got to build this type. You know what I'm saying? You got to make it tight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then you know, however ready you are and safe you feel it is for now going to the wider community, then you do that. And I think really, you know, there's many different environments. There's churches. A lot of people don't think about churches as well. I'm saying they need that knowledge too, because look how much people they're pulling in that. You know what I'm saying? So there's that. There's other institutions, you know, the few community centres that we've got left. You know what I'm saying? And then there's the schools as well. There's the Saturday schools as well.
So basically it's like a strategic plan.
To just move forward and stuff. And then, you know, you can, once you got your thing on lock and tight, then you can go to the other institution.
Okay. So we're gonna have a very short break.
So once again, the topic, for those of you who've just joined us, is how psychology came from its natural and organic African root, study of the soul and spirit, to this grafted one called Western psychology that has caused so many problems. The number to call if you'd like to join the conversation is 079 444 31366. Once again, 079 4444. That's 3 4s. I'll say it again, 079 444 31366. You're in tune to Blitz Radio, and I'd like to say a warm welcome to Shen. Yes, who's been conducting this aspect of the discussion. So Shen, yeah, so I know you previously were talking to Dougie, so for those of you who just joined us, including me, could you touch on what you previously spoke about and how, and then continue?
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about, you know, the origins, we started touching on the origins of psychology, and what does, you know, first asking what inspired me basically, you know, to get into this subject, why this subject is so important for me. And I was explaining that, you know, I've always been fascinated in the study of behaviour, and also I also did a counselling diploma, degree and master's degree as well. So So it's really something that has always been close to my soul, to understand myself ultimately living in the context of this environment, which is dialectically opposes my organic natural self, basically, and the natural self of our fellow brothers and sisters as well.
Right. So you just break down the terms once again. So psychology, what's your definition? Or what is psychology?
We look at psychology and we look at it from a European perspective, and
what is psychology though?
We go to the Greek mythology, which is the feminine soul, or the psyche, which was the goddess of the soul, basically, which they understood it as the study of human behavior. So we went from the goddess of the feminine soul to the study of behavior, which has been which even became more diluted. But from if we go further back, further than Greek mythology or Greek philosophy as well, we go into the Saku. So the Saku is basically is the spirit, and from the word Sa, which is the feminine aspect, and Ku is the spirit. So when we look at the word Sakushetian, is one who studies in depth the spirit of man and woman, or Saku Shetian is a spiritual
leader. This is the Kemetic side,
healer. Yeah. So we're looking at the Kemetic side.
So the Western side is based on a feminine aspect
of this. But really and truly, it's even now they don't even look at it that way. Yeah. So they even cut it even down even more. So
I'm just trying to break it down to basics. So basically, we had our Kemetic science
of it. And then from the Greek perspective,
then it developed into the psyche, the god of the
feminine soul.
Of feminine soul.
Yeah.
And it developed into human behavior. And then from there it's gone to...
It's even gone even further than that, which is basically, we're still looking at human behavior and looking at different aspects of human behavior, and through time, as I mentioned last week, it's gone through journeys. Basically, it's gone through from the physicians to the psychiatrist, to the psychologist, then to the psychotherapist, and then to the counsellors, basically. So it's through all these different transformations and morphs, and it's diluted itself further and further.
So how are they conducting the new definitions of psychology? Is it through tests on animals?
Tests on animals, tests on humans as well. But originally from their worldview, it was to test on animals and using rats, using dogs, trying to use that as the basis of understanding of understanding human behavior. But you really can't really use a rat and a dog.
So basically, like Western psychology now is based on tests.
There's
no spirituality.
There's no spirituality to it.
In how they conduct.
What you get.
Right. Okay.
So there's an action and reaction, basically. So they look at the subject
that's seen and can be measured. Yeah.
Seen that can be measured, and looking at the subject as a separate entity to the one who's analysing the subject.
And it can be manipulated.
And it can be manipulated through reward and punishment. Because if you look at CBT, the behavioralist psychologists created this concept called CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy.
Perfect. So once again,
we're looking at physical behaviour.
Western psychology, so its current basis has nothing to do with any form of spirituality whatsoever. It's all based on lab experiments.
Even to a point of denying the existence of the soul.
Right. So and the science as well is in conflict with
science, which is mostly rational thought, logical. Syllogistical, dissecting, creating dialectical opposites, left brain and right brain, male and female, all that.
Okay, so we've got now through there we've got a thorough definition of Western psychology, how it's transpired from its Greek so-called roots, and in relation to what you touched on last week, in relation to how they analyze behavior, we have this substance called melanin.
Melanin, yeah, that's
right. And melanin cannot be broken down with this rational process of conducting how you're supposed to behave.
No, it can't be. It can't be. No, of course. Because melanin is the key of life. Basically, it's that substance that creates deep truth and deep reality, which cannot be quantified. You know, you cannot quantify the behavior or the science or the essence and the source of melanin.
So how does this, like, as you were saying, so basically, as once again, the topic is how psychology came from its natural, organic, African root, study of soul and spirit, to the grafted one of Western psychology that has caused so many problems. Right, so now you're saying that through the process of this how psychology is developed, it's not, they can't, how can they not tap into the people who've got melanin as a breakdown in their
because they study human behavior, life in general, from their limited mindset of their own limited environment. So they only look at their own limited environment, and they don't even step out of that limited environment. You know, they won't even go to another person's culture ultimately, you know, let alone our melanated cultures and worldview to even attain deeper thought, you know, high culture and deep thought.
And partly of that as well, because I was looking at a book, I'll find the title of the book as well, because melanin works like electricity. It works like electricity. So basically, it's a charge that's unseen charge in us. So that way we have a different reaction that they can't perceive through this.
That's right, because when you look at melanocytes and stuff and how they work in relationship to the rays of the sun. Yeah. So when we have the sun, is, you know, which is the key to life. When you got the Ankhs, you know, the symbol of Ra, and you got Akhenaten with his hands raised. You see the sun with all those hands beaming down and holding the keys, which is the Ankh, which is a symbol of life. So that's what melanin is. Melanin is life. Yeah.
Okay. So
now looking at the relationship between the rays of the rays of the sun, which the melanin melanocyte chemical structure absorbs those rays and converts those rays of the sun into biological energy.
So basically, what happens is we pull the unseen into existence. We
are the charger. Our body charges. We get charged through the melanin, basically, and the sun charges us.
So people who have got so-called a great propensity. Say that again, Fia. Propensity
yes.
to have melanin, and as Dr. Lala Africa said, it's not based on how dark you are physically. It's how much content you have internally,
and how you use it,
and how you use it as well. Right?
You can have loads of melanin and not even use it.
Right, and plus,
and then you have those who don't have as much, and they can use it to a higher degree.
Right, and also it depends on, it's affected by diet as well, is it?
It's affected by health, your nutrition.
Your nutrition.
I mean, how it breaks food and how it binds to food, how it binds to natural elements. You know what I mean? That goes through the photosynthesis process. All those things are important in rebuilding, you know, in increasing the melanin levels, basically.
So that means that you work in more people from like the Kemetic diaspora work more in symphony. Nature.
They work in sync with it.
In sync, that's it. In sync with nature.
With nature. So that goes back to the whole concept of root psychology or root knowledge. Root knowledge was the study of your environment on a 360 degrees level, not just esoterically and then esoterically as well.
So that would that be the basis of why
it studies your natural environment. It studies your holistic, your celestial environment. Everything that we see and not see, it works in harmony with it, and that's the basis of root knowledge. When you get now grafted knowledge, is a delusion. It just looks at things and dilutes everything, and looks at things from more of a physical level, which is basically denying the soul and the spirit.
Okay, fine. Do you want to carry on with your?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I explained here in the level of what is the Saku Shetty, is the deep, profound, and penetrating search, study, understanding, and mastery of the illumination of the human spirit. The penetrating search, study, and understanding requires an investigative approach that always seeks the deeper meaning of phenomena and explores the invisible. So this is a quote by Wade Nobles. So when we look at root knowledge, in relationship to that, it's a study of your environment, study of your cosmological environment, your organic environment. And in regards to root knowledge and psychology, we must also study the book of Ancient Future, which I have here by Wayne Chandler. Yes, Wayne Chandler. And
what does that book?
He talks about the 7 Hermetic laws of ancient Egypt. So the 7 Hermetic laws of ancient Egypt are: 1, the principles of mentalism and the concept of all or God. Then the second one is the principle.
So what's mentalism?
So mentalism, the study of the mind, basically. Mind is universe, universe is mind.
So the study of the mind.
Our mind is a reflection of the universe, or the outer verse,
right?
The inner verse. Okay, so then we have the principles of correspondence, which is the study of the mind on all planes. What corresponds with this also corresponds with that. What corresponds with the feminine soul corresponds with the masculine, the yin and yang as well. And then the principles of vibration. Everything vibrates at a certain rate. So
study of the mind.
So
and it's
study of the mind and the concept
relation to the universe. The second one again is the
correspondence, the study of the mind in relationship to all planes,
all planes,
dimensions,
all different dimensions.
Planets, the word planet is plane. Plane, ET, extraterrestrial. You know what I'm saying?
So So basically, the first one is the mind in relation to everything.
Well, the mind and the concept of God and all the all. So in relation to the creator or the higher.
The mind in relation to the creator.
Yeah, creator. And then the principle of correspondence is the study of the mind in relation to the planes.
So the first is the mind in relation to the creator. The second is the mind in relation to the different planes, the different dimensions, different aspects, like even if you look at a TV, or you look at how your hands move, how you actually the operating system of the mind, not just the production of the mind.
Right. Exactly. And then the sun, moon, and stars, the relationship between the planets and the heavenly astral planes.
Right. And so then the third one is the vibration.
So the third one is vibration, meaning everything vibrates.
Right.
Everything vibrates in different rates.
Okay.
This solid thing, this table here vibrates at a lower rate.
Right. Okay.
But it still vibrates. Rocks vibrate. They've all got life. You know what I'm saying? So then you have, when you look at the spirit, it vibrates at a higher rate. And then when you look at the chakras, you have the chakras, which are the energy wheels that are found within everything, really. But we look at in concept to man and woman, right? So we have 9 chakras, but within the Indo-European concept, they look at 7 chakras. So these chakras are symbolically depicted as lotus flowers, right? As well, with all the petals, right? So the more petals that chakra has, the more we can see its relationship to its vibrational rate.
Do you know the 9 chakras?
Yeah. So we start with the base chakra.
It's the root chakras.
So
root chakra.
For those who don't know, yeah.
Then you got the sacral chakra.
Sacral, yeah.
Sacral.
And then you got, what's the one after that one? That's the.
You got the solar plexus.
Solar plexus, yeah.
Right.
And then there's the heart.
The heart one.
Heart one.
Okay. And then you've got the throat chakra. Okay. So you got the throat chakra.
And you got the crown. The crown.
So then you got the third eye chakra.
Oh, third eye chakra.
Right. And even there's even one underneath the nose here as well. So that's the one there, one there too. Then you have the crown chakra, and then you got also the heavenly chakra as well. Right? So you got those ones. So they all vibrate at different rates. So then you got polarity.
And what's polarity?
So you got different extremes, polar extremes, electromagnetic fields, North Pole, South Pole.
And that's like, is it like light and dark?
Light and dark. Those kind of opposition
dualities,
dualities as well. I'm saying.
So let me just get the mind in relation to the universe, the mind in relation to other dimensions or the different planes, like a rock or the sky, or so how the mind operates. The mind in relation to vibration.
You're right.
Yeah.
So these are principles. Yeah. You've got the principles of polarity as well.
But then polarity.
Polarity, and then we got the principles of gender. Gender. Everything has its own gender as well. So,
are you talking about male, female? Or are you talking about different aspects of each gender?
Talk about everything.
Yeah. So,
male, female, yin, yang.
So when you're talking about gender, it's like, is it personality? Is it related to personality as well, like astrology?
That too,
or
because
characteristic makeup.
The characteristic makeups of the one.
So the 7 principles, once again, is the mind in relation to the universe, the mind in relation to different planes, vibration, then you've got polarity,
gender,
and then you've got gender,
and then you've got rhythm.
Is rhythm the next one?
Yeah.
Rhythm.
So rhythm is 6.
What's the difference between rhythm and vibration?
So vibration is, I'll say, is the movement, right? The back and forth movement, and then the rhythm has some kind of some type of basically.
I just want to bring in the music man. We've got Theo in the house. Yeah, I didn't realise he's got his microphone. Sorry, Dougie, for snatching it out like Usain Bolt. So I'm going to pass this back to and you can break down rhythm.
Yeah. Right, am I? Well, first of all, to the listeners and my fellow contributors this evening, I was a little bit late arriving, and I apologise for that. As I see it, and thank you. And my research into it is a little bit rusty, so bear with me. So I'm just calling on some anciently embedded stuff I got here, as I understand it. So the distinction. When we come to vibration and rhythm, so vibration is about energy, first of all. Rhythm is about.
Sorry, Phil. Energy in what way?
Say again. Energy. All the things all the things you've said thus far. When it comes down to when you see vibration, as you said, everything has life. Everything projects a certain level of energy, and either attracts or repels likeness to it. You see, that's at the fundamentals of vibration.
Sorry, Phil, I just want to stop you there.
Okay.
It's so good having you in the studio, because when you weren't around earlier, something was missing. You know?
Okay. Well, I'm glad to be here now. Okay.
You come here.
Thank you. Right. So that's that. When we go on to rhythm now, okay. Just think about dancing. Just think about the movement of the oceans. It's about flow. Yeah. So rhythm is more about how you utilize your energy.
So rhythm is the utilization.
At the basis of which is your vibration. Yeah, you see. So you can see almost at a glance that all of the Hermetic principles work in concordance with each other. There's a need to more. Yes, exactly. So they all correspond, with each other. So there's no separation really between the two, but it's a case of understanding more or less yourself from the bottom up. You see, you want to continue?
Right. So I want to get this, because we're not moving till we get this. The listeners get it. So the first is the mind in relation to the universe.
Right.
The second is the mind in relation to different planes. Right. Yeah. The third is the vibration. The fourth is the polarity, which is like light and dark. And then the fifth is rhythm.
Is gender.
Then the sixth is
rhythm.
It's rhythm. So right.
Before we go on to the seventh one, there's a little extract from the book Ancient Future.
Right, okay, cool.
It talks about the rhythm, the principle of rhythm, so it's a smaller extract. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swings, manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. Okay? So, movement. Rhythm has movement. So it's how you move within your flow.
Right.
Yeah, so there's rhythm in everything. And rhythm, you know, when we look at rhythm, there's creativity as well. So it's just, when everything moves in a rhythmic form, you actually see the manifestations of its internal existence. In internal reality.
Right.
So everything expresses from the inside out.
Right, okay. What's the seventh one?
So the seventh one is causation. Everything has a cause.
And what do you mean by causation? Just the reason why something happens?
Is right, like we talk about etymology. Right? What causes that word? But then what causes that word to have its root? So what causes the root? So we're going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. But when we look at Western psychology, they only look at...
So I just want to stop you there. So once again, these are 7 what?
7 hermetic principles.
So certain... that essence of this is...
So it comes from the word Hermes, hermetic,
Hermetic, yeah.
Like, which goes back to Hermes...
Hermes is the Greek corruption of Tehuti. So... very often the same principles are actually sometimes referred to as the principles of Tehuti or even the principles of Ma'at.
And so this is the seven elements that we have.
We have internally, and the universe has externally.
I see, because I'm worried when you're using hermeneutics. Hermeneutics means cunning,
right?
And it also means it's cunning and trade as well.
Right. Yes.
So basically, what's happened is they've taken now 7 principles. Studied with their cunning on how to manipulate them.
Of course. But also what they've done is, as Theo rightly said, they've taken out the feminine aspect.
Right.
Because you've mentioned Ma'at. Ma'at, you know, even from a African-centered perspective, there's a lot of people who misunderstand that it was Ma'at or Seishet who gave Tehuti the knowledge.
The wisdom.
The wisdom.
And if you look, if anyone listens to her children, the wisdom. Don't do that. Put that down. How are you going to do your homework?
Exactly.
So the mother, and even in the relationship, the female is the reflection of the male. The female gives the male the knowledge of who he is.
Of course, when we look at the word wisdom, wisdom, even from a basic perspective, that word is wisdom. Dom is the mind, is the brain, is the thing. Wisdom, wiz, meaning knowledge and meaning of understanding, basically.
So once again, the seven principles of who we are.
So basically, these are 7 principles of who we are, which relate straight to the 7 principles of Ma'at as well, because even when you look at the 7 principles of Ma'at, you also have truth, justice, balance, order, harmony, reciprocity, and compassion. And look at this: try just because our hearts require cleansing.
Because what I want to break down.
These are all the initial words, you know what I'm saying?
What I want to break down, because we started all this whole thing is identity. What you have to understand with identity, it's a noun. What you have to understand with a noun is fixed. It can't move. You can't do something with something that can't move.
Right.
For instance, alcoholic. Once someone's called an alcoholic, they're stuck.
You're stuck in that.
If you tell someone they drink too much, then they can drink less.
Exactly.
So we've got to be careful of the word identity, because identity is a noun. It means you can't move, because it's based off the word no. And no means to be free. Because when you start to run, your mother will say no.
Yes, right.
So they've reversed the sound of it. So no in Latin means to be free or to sell. And it was a capital of freebies as well. So no means to be free.
Beautiful.
And then if you put it with un means to stop.
Right.
Capable, uncapable. Use, unusable. Right. So un means to stop. So when you put no, which means to be free, with something un, which means to stop, it means to stop something from having an action.
Right.
So that means that's the word noun. Noun means to stop something to be in action. So what you have to do is come out of this identity thing and start identifying. And when you identify, that means you're moving towards something.
Right.
So it's supposed to be moving towards.
That's right.
So can you go through them 7 principles again?
So basically,
this is what was forget about identifying with a piece of land or rock.
Exactly.
You're supposed to be moving towards a principle that you can't see.
That's right.
Which is what's the 7 principles again?
So these principles are mentalism,
which is the mind in relation to the universe.
Or God, or as we like, some people
or creative energy or whatever. Yeah.
Then the principle of correspondence.
Correspondence in relation to the different planes and your dimensions.
Then we have vibration.
So these are our real identities. And what's the third identity?
Then we have vibration.
Because I said basically you've got to identify with your higher nature.
That's right.
You've got to identify with how you move in relation to your surroundings. You've got to identify in relation to your vibration. You've got to identify towards the genders, polarities. You've got to identify towards gender.
Rhythm
and
causation.
So this is your true identity, and you know it when you move to music.
That's right.
Because you're identifying with the unseen.
That's right. So and that's all part of psychology as well.
Well, there's psychology. We're more telepathic. This is what we are. We're identifying with the feeling, with the unknown, and this is the essence of who we are. Generated by Melaninated.
That's right.
The Melaninated is the electric nature of us to tap into this. So would you say that and this is when this dynamic is manifesting, it's formulating, isn't it? In the human body this time. So would you say that the average psychologist or average teacher would know this?
No, this is why the average teacher is failing our children. Go and see the psychologist or show them what they're teaching.
I'd like to bring Dougie in on this now. Dougie, what have you got to say about it? That we identify with the unseen, and the European can't see what's unseen in his analysis of being rational.
Okay, because I was going to ask a question around what you're saying, based on what you're just saying about the psychiatrists. Because when you go and see them, what you do, you see him. So you're on a couch, innit, like on a settee, and you speak to him, tell him about your problem, and he listens to you, and he goes, okay then, come back again. Takes your money and come back. And he hasn't really, you just did it to let off your... So, I mean, I just want to know what's that about. And, I mean, I'm just a bit confused, because...
So I just want to, for the listeners, we've been talking about in relation to how if the Western psychology can actually help us as melanated people, and Doug is brought into the equation of the practice of a can it help us? And our brother Doug is brought into in relation to the psychology now. The psychologist's method of putting us to lie on a couch and just listening to us. What is the benefit of that process?
As it is, there's no benefit really. I mean, I'm going to be straight with you. There's no benefit in that, and also in that aspect, there is a power dynamic going on there, really and truly. And the power dynamic is the psychiatrist or the psychologist comes with a standpoint of he or she knows what you need. From the beginning, they don't even want to listen to you. They just look at the paperwork.
So basically, we've got this dynamic going on us. What they're not really, but through their perception, they've already analysed it from their perception. Their cure and their cause from their perception.
Conclusion, because obviously there's agendas going on, and there's worldviews going on. So when somebody from a different worldview goes to get assessed from somebody who may represent the dominating world view or the dominating culture, going by the dominating rules of that culture, the dominating principles of that culture, there's already a power dynamics going on in there. Basically, there's a power and control, because he or she's a knower, and you've come to be known.
Theo, I'd like to bring you. What's your analysis of what has just been said?
I was out the room. I was actually trying to get something. It was on the top of my head, and I wasn't really there with it. But I wanted to contribute to the whole.
Sound like you need a psychologist there.
Oh yeah, I do, don't I? I do. I'm using my weasel words while I get myself together here. You can see I'm trying real hard here. What I want you to go back to, you see, is this whole thing about at a certain level they recognize that when we're talking about these so-called psychologists who we really have to and I don't want to sound like I'm admonishing anybody. We're all aware of it, and yourself especially, and yourself, being very much attuned into the etymological implications of everything that we are saying. So everything relates to what we're talking about, and when we talk about the psychologists that are as adults, we go and consult, and then obviously they. Will then, inject their misdirection into all of their diagnosis, their advice, and everything like that. Then, the teachers, as we refer to them, and I'm not really a big person on this whole word, right? When it comes to that.
I can go into that when you finish, Theo.
Of course, do by all means. And but you see, they are psychologists also. Of course. Remember, I'm not sure if we touched on that yet. But then we go into people activity, after economics, and then obviously just like in terms of how the so-called white supremacy works, which is another.
No, it's Urugu.
No. Still talking about. Well, we'll get to Urugu in a second.
That's the day we should be using.
Exactly. Right.
Throw that word away.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're absolutely right. Now, in terms of how Urugu works, you see, all of these things are part of a collective venture. That's right. So. Your teacher is operating on a slightly different dimensional plane in terms of how their system works as the psychologist. So they're almost they are psychologists in and of themselves. So they are also bringing that screen down over your awareness and your connection with your core self, your core values. So they always operate on that level. So it's all going to be about dealing with, of course, psychology is the root of that, is psych, and that of course corresponds to what we call soul, because that's the whole origin of that. Am I right with that? Yeah. All right, so there you go. So they know what they're messing around with, and they know the purpose of messing around with it. So then it's incumbent upon us to, reclaim that. That's why the whole thing about us taking back the socialization and the learning process is of paramount, absolutely paramount.
I remember you using the word culture last week. Everything they do, everything what people do.
Oh yeah, every work. And then at the end of the day, well, you see, you quoted Wade Nobles last week when he talked about the definition of power, and he also has a wonderful kind of breakdown of culture, which he says, a general design for living and patterns for interpreting reality. I mean, that is just so profound when you look at it. So if all of these things are doing cultural work, then that is going to have an impact on your very self-concept. Your concept of everything around you, the way in which you even, interpret and relate to, your very existence, ourselves, each other. You see, and we're all talking about developing ourselves to our highest level. And if your interpretation is off kilter, then everything else is going to be. Your economics is going to be. Your relationships with each other is going to be. Everything is going to be off kilter if that interpretation is off.
I mean, even with the 7 principles that we just spoke about.
Yeah.
We're looking at what mentalism is injecting in our children.
And I'd just like to in touch with both of you. What's it? First, Urugu. We've got to stop using this word white. Urugu means somebody who manages disorder. So this is what they do. They were on a disorder thing. And the second thing, we work off principles. We identify with principles they deal with culture because culture is a cult.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's what they do. They deal with cults. You know, we deal with principles. Yeah, so that's what I like to add.
So bring us that whole breakdown of the teacher for me, please.
Oh,
I was waiting to hear that.
So basically, it's based on what you're teaching, you know, and what is the foundation of your teaching. You know, the foundation of your teaching is it's a belief. That's all it is. It's just a belief, opinion, or a dogma that you try to you turn into a rule, and then the rule becomes a law. Because once you say something and you can get people to act towards it, then you can create it's an axiom. An axiom, which basically something that happens anyway, but you put your authority to it, and then you turn it into a rule. So basically, teaching. Any form of teaching is just a belief that they're imposing on somebody else. There's no foundation of any facts, figures, or evidence.
And that brings me down to the CBT model, bases upon
what model?
CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is what they use in psychology now, very easily packaged as well. So even the NHS use it. They use it in the youth offender, they use it in the probation. Basically, it's all basic of studying the human, based trying to alter behaviour by altering their thinking and their feelings. So you have thoughts and feelings, which then give action, but those thoughts and feelings come from beliefs, values. So again, it goes back to a belief system, or be like Eve.
And I just, break from what you said. Sorry, I've got a better definition of teaching. It's called fundamental.
Fundamental.
Yeah, fundamental. That's what it is. They make a fundamental principle. So basically, inside the word fun is that deadly word which is something against it, yeah. You know, so basically when you have fun, that means you need something else to make you happy.
That's right.
Yeah, the old definition for fun means to trick, or fun, or to play with something.
I see.
So fun convinces you that you need something else to feel good.
Excellent.
You know, then when they've convinced you that, you start funding it. You start putting your energy or money towards it, so the fund becomes fund. And then you fund a mental attitude. You see. So that's what teaching is. It gives you, says you need this qualification. For qualification is just what I say. If you can do it well, then you're getting a medal. That means you're repeating what I've said. You're not creating anything else new. You're just doing what I've told you to do. You see, so you're funding a mental attitude. And then once you fund a mental attitude, then you can put a rule to it. And then once you put a rule to it, then it becomes a self-perpetuating reality, you know. So that's the whole thing about his fun.
I wonder if I could just jump in here.
Sorry, Doug, I just want to bring one little point.
Go on.
The only way a belief can become powerful is when it gets recognition. So the way we have to stop this, like the application of their laws, is to stop giving it recognition. Listen to the word recognition. A car works from ignition. Right. So when you give something recognition, you're igniting it. After the ignition, cog, it starts to turn towards you. Re means to back. So when you recognize a belief, you ignite it to turn towards you. When you ignite it to turn towards you, you're pulling their thing forwards. So they come towards you because you're recognizing their belief. It gives them the power to come into you. Ignition.
Powerful. That's deep. That's powerful.
I hope that broke it down for you. Sorry,
yes, no. That's very powerful, and I like that, man. I like that coming perfect. I just want to go back to the thing about the psychology, this Western psychology, what they do, right? Because people are listening right now, and people might hope you don't get the impression that shit drop out them something there, you know what I mean, and whatever. But don't forget, there are some our people who are into that. You see what I'm saying? So what I'm trying to say is that what can we do? What advice would you say? Because I mean, we got to look at alternative. Or should we? If you're in that system there, And you know, there's a bit of hypocrisy, or there's a contradiction here. What can we do? Or what advice would? Because I'm a psychologist. He's trained by them. What advice would you give me? That's basically what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Or we say just drop all that now and just go. I just want to.
No, I wouldn't say to drop it, because there's, as I mentioned last week, there are aspects of us that has been created by the system in which we live in.
Right.
So in order for us to really understand those aspects is to understand Western psychology, but understand it from an African-centered framework.
Oh, right. I see what you're saying.
Right? Because in order for you to really understand the monster created by Frankenstein, we have to understand Frankenstein. But it doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
But a lot of us just stop there.
So what is
back to our back to our original organic.
Right. So looking from our African eyes. That's what you're saying, really. Yeah.
And look at it from a critic, because when you start looking at it from your own basis and your own cultural dynamic and worldview, you start looking at things differently. Okay then. All right. Because I just want to bring it out there, because I mean, there's people listening right now and really gravitate to what's been said. So we want to make sure that we're taking them. Become. Have a wider perspective of knowledge and psychology. Not just from a Eurocentric perspective, but also from your own African perspective, or the perspective you're coming from. It doesn't have to just be African, you could be Chinese, you have to look at it from your own perspective as well.
Chill, I rate you, man. I rate you. Rate you all the way, man. Yeah, man. Give thanks for that still. See? Give thanks, man. Give thanks.
So, expanding on that, the 7 principles, and then we've got a little bit of, in its single highest digit number, which is 9, it's the spiral again.
So the right
9 roots out, and also if you look at the follicle of the hair.
So the 7.
7.
Yeah.
Creates a right angle.
Yeah.
90 degrees. Right, which is also almost like a box as well, which is 360 degrees as well. Right, so that relates to the number 9. 90 in its single digit numerical form is 9, right? So you take away the 0, leaves a 9 basically, right? So that relates to the spiraling or the coiling of our Afro hair, or our 9 ether hair basically, right? But also on a spiritual level, it's the highest vibrational number as well.
I just want to stop you there, because you said the 7, relates to the highest level.
Yeah.
If you look at law, the first letter is the opposite. Still the 7, but upside down.
Okay.
So it's taking our level to the lowest level.
That's why L.
Yeah.
Which also, but when you link it together, it forms a square.
And sorry, with law, you've got the L, as you say, is the right angle.
Right angle, yeah.
So they're trying to show angle means crooked. So they're showing you the bent ways, right? So anyway, that's the first letter of the word law. Go.
That's it. So then, but then the 7 relates to the 7th letter of the alphabet, which is G. And when you look at the letter G, it has the circle and the square in it.
And what does the G relate to?
It relates to the circle and the square. So the 7th letter of the Aleph Beth, which is the G.
Right. Okay.
Right. Which we look at the letter G forms the circle and the square. So it's both masculine and feminine principles.
So I've got some phone in there, Gemma. So I think there's someone on the line here.
We got somebody on the line.
Greetings,
Gemma. Abu.
Oh, greetings, Abu. Galaxy FM in the building. Yes, Abu.
Big up yourself, Abu.
Rise up,
brother. Yes,
sir. Respect every time. So how's everything on your side going, Abu?
Well, we're alive.
They don't take you out yet.
Yeah?
I said they don't take you out yet then.
No, we're on land and the web at the moment, By weekend we come back on the FM.
All right then. So everything good though?
Yeah, man.
That's it.
Great to that, Abu. I look forward to coming down to your side of the fence. Addition to the discussion, the topic is how psychology came from its natural, organic African roots to this grafted Western psychology, and why has it caused so much problems? What's your contribution?
Well, I mean, that is what we are running now. We are on a psychological warfare, isn't it?
Right, yes.
You understand? You know, it's nothing they can do to us spiritually. You know? But they can do it to us in a psychological way. You understand?
Yes.
Look at what Trump said, yeah? Trump talked about the shithole, yeah?
Yes.
But in a way, he's right, because if you colonize something, you must go through the colon. You need a colon cleansing.
Right.
That's right.
You understand?
Yes.
So, what Trump is saying, the only reason why we start to shut down the whole place is because we want to be equal to them. You know, and that is a dangerous psychological problem, you know, when black people are fight what's to be equal.
Yes, to their levels. Yes, that's correct.
No, man, you understand? So we definitely have a psychological problem. That's true, blood.
And how did we get this psychological problem in your view?
At the church, blood.
Right. Sorry for laughing. Yes.
At the church reinforce it, my brethren, because somebody got to reinforce it. Because look at it, Jama.
Yeah.
Look at it, right? The things then that we're going through now, it planned around 100 years ago, you know.
Right.
But the people that move planet is not around. Somebody has to continue it.
Sure, it's a good point.
Yes.
Good point.
You understand?
Yes.
I'm telling you, blood. I don't care what no African people want to say. The biggest problem we have as African people in this free, what we call free, because I'm telling you, blood, right? You see, when you're enslaved and put yourself in slavery, it's two different things. Once we were enslaved, but today we put ourselves in slavery.
Right. We're going willingly now, yes.
Going willingly now, blood.
Willingly to willingly.
In everybody's name except ours.
But Abdul, let me ask a question. So, what do you think we can do right now to come out this kind of madness we're in, this enslavement? I mean, what do you think is the way forward, so to speak, from your perspective? Yeah.
You see, what we have to do, we have to come out of the competitive mood. You know, you can't have Afrocentric a complete with Christianity or Islam. They run them one blood. There's no competition. You know, if a brother or a sister fell down on the side and you can support them, you support them. If you can't, leave them alone. But it doesn't mean that you have to, you understand, do what they do. Understand, God? You know, we as African people have to let go a lot of things, and we have to stop lying to ourselves. Because we out there sell this spirituality, but we are as much religious as anybody else.
Very true.
Yeah, and we as you say, we support that. We say one thing, but when you look where our money's going back to them faster than we can get it.
Yeah. Because our liberation on the compound weekend, bank holiday,
and so-called Christmas time.
Kwanzaa, Latin Devon, it's not a big
every time, man. Every.
God, we have to look part enough. I mean, I have to ask the question: which month is Wazungu History Month?
Yeah.
Which month?
For real. It's for real, you know.
Yeah, man. You know, we're in a good position where we can help to change the narrative.
It's true.
But some of us are afraid to make a change.
What's causing the fear then? What's causing this fear now?
Repetition. Repetition. Some people been known as this and they don't know so well. Sometimes you got to change, blood, because you're going down the wrong road. Right. You understand? You know, repetition. You know, some people are, boy, in camp, preach, you know. But it's like you were preaching, blood. You understand?
Yeah.
Use that same skill. Use that same skill and start to do something more progressive. You understand? It's a lot of things in dramas, you know. When I listen our people, our people start to call our young people negative.
Right.
And I'm saying that's not right. I could never see the youth them do anything that is good and tell them that them do positive thing. No. Because it takes negative and positive to make them do what them do.
Right. Balance, yes.
And I'm telling you, I've listened to all of these so-called inspiration speakers, all of these people, but they're all messing up the mind of our people with this thing. But imagine, you go to a Mahat meeting, and a person said to you, oh, it was a positive meeting, you know? Okay.
Yes. It's unbalanced straight away.
Listen, man. Listen. We are psychological damage because we're only dishing out our examination tests on the people.
For real.
Everything that we are dish out our people is going to take on the examination. You understand? And whenever it's not an African pass. Every test we do is to please the European.
Yes. Yeah.
You understand?
And then we try and use that knowledge on ourselves and wonder why it failed.
Yeah, it's not education that does, it's training. All our black people have is good training.
And as you said, a certificate. You said you have to get a certificate, and as you say, to certify someone meaning declare them mad.
Yeah, there is. And they will use that status to look down on you. You understand? You know? Some of these man with all them, what am I call them doctorate. They can't even come to an erection to blow snot and they're dead. You understand?
And then die before you die as well, yeah.
Push you have all of them things there. You're a millionaire, you have all of these degrees. And you're 90 degrees away from even come to life.
Theo, have you got anything to ask the doctor?
Yeah?
We've got Theo's here as well. He wants to...
Hey, Theo, my brethren.
Yes, my brother. How you doing, man? How you doing?
All the time, my validator. All the time.
Yes. Now, what we were discussing here was, the distinction between, the African psychology and the European. So I just, as a question, I mean, I think it's important that people actually have a decent comprehension of what grasping the African self is. Could you elucidate on that in your own view?
Well, as I said, sometimes when the Africans talk about African psychology, you have to see where we get it from. Yeah. You understand? You know, the most, if I want to understand African psychology, I'd have to go to all the IFA principle.
Yeah, that's right.
The Dogan.
That's right.
You understand? I can't go upon these scholar.
No.
Because these scholars, somebody turned them into a fellow. You know? You know, man, you have to look on it from those principles, because those folks that even before we are sit today. You know? If you want to look deep in African psychology, if you want to ask them the question, don't ask them man the question, go ask that tree, because they were on long time before, man. Yeah, it's a living entity that you deal with it.
That's right.
You know, see? But this is what I said. If you have been educated into a three-dimensional person, consider that there's multiple dimensions out your blood. You understand?
I think that's key. It's a key. What you've just said there. That we're asking someone who's not like us to tell us who we are.
That's right.
That's the key. What you just said there.
Well, there you are, blood. There you are. You know. There you are, because all is given to us It's like you watch a cookery program. Here is one we cook earlier on. Nothing not changed.
And it's like getting a plumber to fix your car. You never get a plumber to fix your car.
Because we lock into the illusion. We lock into the illusion. We see these African people then with maybe a car or a job, and we have said, oh, powerful they are. They're not powerful. They are pitiful. Let's wake up. Powerful people bring resource and service to their people. Pitiful people become a parasite on other people's luxury and want to be like other people. All people like Hope and all them people, they are pitiful, my brother. These are not powerful people. We have to wake up and realize, Hope ain't buying gifts to poor black people. He might give it to middle class white woman. We already have it. Wake up. These are the psychological damage that we are under, blood. You know? And we come alive when Wazungu honor us and give us global this and give us an Oscar. We come alive.
Yes.
You understand? You know, these are slave blood.
It's true. So it's just like what Malcolm X said, is that the house Negro, that we celebrate when we are more like them than we are ourselves. You know?
What I'm saying, the brethren, being in something and put yourself in something is two different things. These are slaves. You understand? They're mine. It's the mind you have to look on in the blood.
Yeah.
You know? You know? How the book going, Jamal?
Actually, you can tell your people it's back in circulation. I just picked them up yesterday. The books are back in circulation now, so I'll be bringing some down on Monday, yeah?
Well, yeah, man, because they're my street, you know?
Yeah, so I'll have them on Monday, so you can tell the people I'll bring some down for you anyway. So they're going good, you know, and the Speakers Club will be back as well. March, you know? The last Sunday in March will be back, you know?
I said, go, man, you know, and man, if we just keep on doing the work, man. Dougie,
yeah, man,
all the time, you know?
Man. Every time, my brother. Every time.
All the time.
Yes, sir. Give thanks.
Well, you know, I have an end of month meeting where we have to go in, you know, so you know, we're never going at a meeting, you know, so you know, we have to gather, you know?
Yeah, man. Give thanks.
Big up yourself, Abu. I'll see you on Monday, yeah?
All the time,
Galaxy. That's all the time. Respect, Abu.
Well, if I voodoo.
Respect, voodoo. I'd like to thank once again Galaxy, Dr. Abu, for giving us his contribution. I'll be down there on Monday, and I just like, sorry, man, we just turn up. Quitters, you can't just come in so late. What happened to you, man? You made me late. Boy, you know, say, well, me and my brethren for coming, and you know, my brethren just come and Quitters, you can't bring her next, man. Who's this brother? Yeah, my brethren, come in, man. Yeah, it passed the Dutchie, man. Pass the Dutchie, because me met him and him say he can bring me some spirits, you know, so me I can let him tell. Chris says you can't just bring in extra people in there. So who's this guy? Him pass the Dutchie, let him speak, man. Yeah, let me just, because I see him and him say he can get me to the spirit. So, alright, so sorry about it. We just got a criticism just coming with this person who's cut. Can you introduce yourself? Hello, man, I am Pastor Dutchie, and I have just told my friend, I think his name is Quitters, I can bring him to the spirit. Yeah, man, bring me to the spirit, man. You see, Jammers? You're messing up the show, you know. Yeah, well, me, I can bring you to the spirits. Can you give you some blessings? So come and get your blessings and get in the spirit. Yes. You see, baby, I tell you, if I bring me to the spirit, we want two brandy. So go bring me. Look, you two come out just come out the studio right now. Chris says just come out the studio. So I'll have to apologize to the listeners for that untimed interruption. Chris has just come in with this guy called Pastor Dutchie, so I don't know what's going on there. So sorry, Shanna, about that interruption.
It's okay.
Yeah. So as you just joined us, it's not the Archer's gone wrong. It's we just had a little interruption. We're on Bless Radio. We're talking about psychology and can it impact on us as melanated people. If you'd like to contribute, the number is 079 444 31366. Once again, 079 444 31366. We was talking initially about the 7 principles that we have. We're talking about identity, and we're saying identity means to when you move to something. So we initially was talking about 7 principles, and can you just break down the principles briefly, and then the other 7?
Yeah,
that
so
you
the
about?
7 Hermetic laws, or shall I say the 7 laws of Tahuti, which is basically the 7 principles of Ma'at as well. So we have principles of mentalism and the concept of the all or God, the principle, and then we have the principle of correspondence, the study of the mind on all planes, and then the principle of vibration. Everything has its own vibrational rate, and then we got principles of polarity, opposites, the principle of gender, masculine and feminine, not just on a biological level, but also on a cosmological level and principle level as well, as in yin and yang, yang and yin. And then we got the principle of rhythm. Everything has movement and moves in a specific, in its own natural way or unnatural way as well. And then we have the principle of causation. Everything has its roots, everything has its cause, everything. And then we touched on also the 7 principles of Ma'at, which is truth, justice, balance, order, harmony, reciprocity, and compassion, which relates to try just because our hearts require cleansing. Right. So we do, because we're here to experience, and we're here to basically transform ourselves to become better souls, to actually cultivate those innate qualities within us.
So basically, as what we were saying is, this is our identification. What we identify is with the unseen, and it's initiated by the substance called Melaninated, which is our electrical energy that enables us to do that, and then the power source, and it shapes by the content that you have within, how you use it, and also your diet. And then we touched on that the Western psychological principle, and your average teacher or psychologist does not base anything in relation to what was just been spoken. Yeah. So you're going to get that.
So going back to the concept of root psychology as well, or root knowledge, as opposed to studying things based on our limited environment. This is what I found in my research, that Western psychology does is very limited in its understanding of ourselves as humans in relationship to each other and the universe and our natural environment. So root psychology is connected to the universe, the astral planes, the stars, the planets, the deities. We talked about deities before, and the brother talked about the Ifa. I've got the
Abdul.
Yeah, Abdul talked about.
Was it Abdul?
Abu. Abu. He spoke about the Ifa. That's another dynamic. That relates very well to the Neteru of ancient Kemet, but they would each have their own principles that are quite relative, but it has its own respect as well. So, the deities and how they relate with the development of the human mind and soul. The foundation of growth, the foundation of psychology was originally founded by the concept of man, know thyself, or woman, know thyself. Man, on one level means mind as well. So basically it's about knowing who you are. So knowing the wild beast or shall I say the wild beast within us, by understanding them, one can bring them into rule and be used for a higher purpose. So we've got all those qualities within us, agreeable and disagreeable qualities that need to be cultivated and also managed and ruled. Not ruled in a Caucasian, in a Western sense or the Yurugu sense, but ruled within an ordered or transformed within a root sense.
Okay, I know Theo is breathing on my back. I don't even want to come in from me. He's looking at me like, can I?
Sorry, Doug, before Theo comes in, the mic was off when you were saying about the 7 principles. So can you just say the 7 principles again, and then let Theo come in? So we're talking about the things that we identify as melanated people. The first 7 principles once again.
Yeah, the 7 principles were mentalism and the concept of all and God, And then the planes of correspondence. Everything has its correspondence relationship to one another. The study of the mind and all planes. The principle of vibration. The principle of polarity. The principles of gender, the principles of rhythm, and the principles of causation.
And the seven
principles of Ma'at.
Yeah, which are
truth, justice, balance, order, harmony, reciprocity, and compassion, which breaks down to the reason why we are here on this plane or planet is to cultivate those innate, latent qualities. Thus, we have to try just because our hearts require cleansing.
Okay, fantastic. So, Theo, I mean, what do you want to bring to the table now, Theo, in terms of what's been said? Because I know you've said some very valuable things in the early part. So I just want to bring you to the mix and get your spin on what's been said.
Yeah. Well, see, firstly, I don't want to stray too far away from that which has just been said. But we were speaking before the interval. Before the caller, should I say, before Abu came on, about this, which was behind the question I was asking him to give us his own insight into the whole idea of this distinguishing between, our fundamental African psychology and the European one, which has obviously infested many African people at a very fundamentally, at a psychological level. Essentially, but you and I recently were conversing elsewhere. We was round the table and was talking about, we can say a lot of these things, and Dr. Abu was quite articulate in what he was saying about the whole idea of embracing ideas that are supposedly African, because what we really want to do is find a way in which we can mobilize all of these things that Brother Shen is talking about in a functional way, so that they work, so that this cycle doesn't perpetuate itself over and over and over, because we're pretty much at a junction now where we have a grasp of what we're the challenging we're facing. But in order to overcome that, then I think you remember what I was saying the other day, which was that what our people are really asking for is not to be blinded with science, and I'm not taking issue with anyone in this room because we all know what we're talking about. But what we're talking about, you said there's people out there and they want to know things, and essentially that comes down to having some form of practical solution, a way in which to implement things that they are, things that they are, that they're being advised about. So and that was why I was asking the question. So I came across something. I don't know why. I don't know where I saw it, but I wrote it down because it was quite interesting. It says, when you speak, you create the geometry needed to carry the sound frequencies needed for the intended receiver. The brain then receives the geometry of the sound and decodes that information based on their environmental programs we call languages, right? So we're saying a lot of stuff, you see, but then, as we touched on earlier, we use a lot of terminology, and we're not necessarily clear on the effect that terminology is having. Because you're talking about recognition, ignition, having cognitives and behavioral. These kind of things are about tailoring and shaping the way people think. When you tailor and shape the way people think, that then goes on and impacts how they behave and how they act. That is going to have implications on outcomes. You see, and so when it comes down to people being able to, so we've got to be able to refine and make all of our messages useful in a certain way, in terms of talking about re-establishing or the restitution or rebuilding African consciousness on a certain level, because you see, these are my own, because when it comes to understanding, DJ Supreme was having a go at me one evening after a Speakers Club event, and he asked me what knowledge was.
Knowledge?
What knowledge was?
After what you feel that he's listening in, you know, so be careful what you say.
Is he listening in? Yeah, well, I think DJ he should come and call in if he wants to. No, but see, the answer I gave him at the time I didn't think was inadequate, so I thought about it afterwards, and I thought, you know, and at the end of the day, I would just break it down rather simply and say it's the application of understanding. But then that goes through a process. So I thought about that, and then I kind of thought, well, okay, you have two main branches of going from, you know, not being aware of something to understanding, overstanding, understanding, whichever one we want to use, right? So, and I would say they are, this is where we have to be helpful. We have to be helpful in the terms of comprehension and interpretation. You see, these are not dictionary definitions. I actually came up with these myself. Comprehension, the act or process of discerning or deriving meaning from a given stimulus. And then interpretation, grasp of the central concept to the extent or degree that it serves functioning purpose. So that should be our goal when we are, you know, presenting this information, and we want to lay these foundations for how we build up from a certain position, you know, and taking that onwards. All of these things that we're talking about are really useful. We've got to package them in a way that they really drive home the message and can actually serve people in what they want to do, because we no longer want to languish in this position, you know, ad infinitum. You know, Shen, you looking to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to say something.
Yeah.
You know,
let my brethren speak, man. Let me brethren speak. Festus coming. I would just like to say I agree entirely with you, because we're living in a situation of deprivation, and society's kind of, as he said, interpretation is all a way that we get in our understanding. We understand and we understand it. So praise to raise, praise to raise. Let me tell you, my brother, Dougie, let me tell you, my brother, you can speak better than all of you. Shane, come in.
Thank you. I was going to say. Okay, so basically, it starts from how we communicate with each other. I think number one, we spoke about you know, the protocols, the compensatory code. You know, how we relate with one another, how even the sense of showing compassion, being harmonious with each other, showing reciprocity. You know, being truthful, showing justice in the way that we are with one another as well. Balance and order, having order in our lives. How do we create a harmonious home? That's where it starts from.
Yeah.
I mean, from tradition, even when I went to Nigeria. I've been to Nigeria a few times, and I would say, but even in Haiti as well. Children at the house, in the homes, knew exactly what their responsibilities were at home. It starts from that, unquestionable. You know, at a certain age, you're expected to do this. At a certain age, you're expected to do that in the home, and that's how they started to basically develop their own system in the house. That was before we even touch education. That is part of their, you know, the natural organic education. So I would say it starts from how we communicate, how we relate with one another.
Doug, I think you got some texts, is it?
No, it's Supreme. Phone in, man. Where I deal with.
and just to take on from Jen, and you know, of course we don't have Brother Lyndon here this evening, Elder Lyndon, I should say.
Yeah, he said
one thing that he said I loved actually was that you know, you need to make our homes into schools.
Yes,
you see, and I would suspect that it doesn't just intend that to be taken on a purely academic level. It's like it's all levels, because you see, when we talk about education, we're really talking about, or as we recognize it in terms of mainstream, we're talking about a structuring, not the structuring, a structuring of the learning process. So that means there are alternative learning processes and that we can implement. Now the thing about it is we are going to the I'm jumping from thing to thing, and we have the last principle of Tahuti is causation, cause, and one of the sayings related to that is that in every action, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
That's right.
So, without dwelling too far upon that, I mean, let's look at it. There's a reason why. Excuse me. You know, there's a reason why, or you could say, there's a cause why we are in this room and others are not.
That's right.
You see, it's not really happenstance that we end up being here. There's causal factors that lead us all to be here, discussing this, having the outlook we have on this situation, and that's not an accident. So if we can find us in this environment discussing these things, then we can find other people into this environment, and then more people to actually carry out the work that we so desperately need to do. And that obviously does start in that principal environment, which is our homes, and then we don't necessarily have to invite anyone who doesn't need to be there in there, especially if you don't have any real agreeable intentions. And if we understand who our adversaries are, and then we know who to invite and who not to invite. So you have to be making a kind of contribution. Of course, it means that sometimes down the road there may be certain people you have to kind of distance yourself from, because the level of infection is is variable across. There's no like the Matrix is, they say in the Matrix movie, you don't know who. If you ain't one of us, you're one of them. And some of the people will, even when Morpheus saying, some of the people we're trying to save would die to protect the system we're trying to save them from. But it does start from there, and implementing those ideas there on a very serious level.
Yeah. I mean, I also spoke about the tree of life, remember? We spoke about the tree of life, the 11 concepts and principles. And I, for myself, what really helped me to further understand myself was to understand and understand those concepts, those 11 ruling principles that come from the one source. So each of those principles have a certain personality or manifestation of the soul. So you go to the ether as well. And I'm saying you have the ether, and you have the many orishas in the ether system. These orishas are spiritual manifestations, but also they are characteristics of yourself. You may have a dominant orisha ruling you, or your ori. However, you are all those.
Okay.
It's about cultivating those.
Search, we've got someone on the live call here. Greetings. Right, when I'm calling, I'm going to turn the. So we've got someone on the live call here. Greetings.
Yeah.
Why am I here?
Sorry. Yeah, I was just trying to flag up that Shen's mic is low. We can't
his mic is low. Okay then.
It's either low or it's off.
So you have to speak more into the mic,
yeah?
Yeah. Alright, so anyway, you have a question?
Yeah, alright, let me just turn off my laptop.
Yeah.
Because you was talking about psychology and cognitive behaviour, I was really tuning in. But you kind of touched on something but never got to finish it. And that's with Dougie, who was talking about when sitting in the chair in the psychotherapist.
Yeah.
Puts you in a chair and puts you. I was waiting for Shen to kind of respond to why you're put in that state, and basically, just me thinking from my observation is that the psychotherapist is just trying to get you relaxed, to peel back those layers of what the problem is. So we'll start, we just start by asking what is the problem, but it's over a period of time that he'll break down what your problem is and try and rebuild you back, because cognitive behavior I think Shen was touching it, is more talking. So it's like talking through your problem, you know. One of the let's look at what's going on currently, but I wanted Shen to really finish it. Currently is, would you, if you went in for an anxiety problem, would you want someone to talk to you over it or give you medication? Because we have to find out what the root of the problem is. Just to put you on a medication is not solving the problem.
Of course.
But you know, you could look at currently now, the biggest things that are currently now is, you could say, anxiety, depression, people feeling low, people not eating, people not sleeping.
That's right.
Okay.
In America, one of the number one drugs, you know, is Prozac.
Prozac, that's right.
Yeah, and talking about Prozac, you're going to be finding that if you look at the statistics, it's mainly teenagers and people under 30 that are taking it.
Of course.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
which is like what is an antidepressant.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
It's banned in certain areas of the world. So what do they do? Change the name. I think it's called Fluoxetine.
Fluoxetine.
You know, with medication, they just keep changing the name.
Of course.
And bringing it in under another, you know, way of treating people.
Yeah.
Saying, oh, well, it's banned over there. But the NHS started to now bring in, if you know about your doctor's surgery, instead of giving that medication, is to talk to you.
Yeah.
If the doctor can't talk to you, then he'll send you to what do you call them people? The same thing what Doug said, your psychotherapist. And one of those things is cognitive behaviour. So what basically you're doing is saying, okay, is this person going to self-harm themselves? Can this person? It's basically about mental capacity when you check it, isn't it? Can you function? Why are you not functioning? So it's just peeling back those layers. But I thought I was just listening to Shen to find out, because he kind of was touching on CBT.
Yeah. Okay. Well, give thanks for that. That's quite good. All right, Shen, you want to?
I just wanted to quickly just jump in. Basically, when you're saying peeling back the layers, really, most of them just want to peel back the layers of clothes. They got you in that position. Somebody, most recent one was the one in the Olympics. He got 176 years for what he did to the young girls in the Olympics. So basically, they put you in this position and you're at your weakest state, so they can do their therapy. The rapist. Look at the word therapist. It's the rapist. Sorry, Shane, come in.
Yeah, I mean, just expanding on that as well, we have to look at from which worldview are they using this principle of CBT, you know, and also when they're looking at depression, they're looking at all these emotional states. From which worldview are they looking at it from as well? They're just looking at the physical aspect. They're not even looking at the spiritual aspect. They're not even looking at the soul aspect. They're not looking at the aspect holistically. You know what I mean? We live in an environment where there's lack of sun, of natural sun, and that creates SAD.
All right. Let me just get some clarity here. So my brother, Superior.
Yeah.
Because check, correct me if I'm misrepresenting information from here, but what you're saying, Ched, that we need to look at it from a holistic perspective, right? Where you're right, my brother, in terms of we do see these therapists, right? They have to put in a state to, you know, to subdue, and to go deep and, you know, take a look. Yeah. They don't really look at it from a holistic approach. I'm not saying they don't get results, because Chedi said that. I mean, you know, you got to look at these things here, but you got to look at it from a holistic approach. Am I right in saying that, Ched, in terms of what I'm saying?
It's also what results are we looking at as well? Because they have results, but what type of results? Okay, are they temporary results, or are they long-lasting results?
Okay, then.
Are they holistic results? Are they just results to do tick box? You know, the whole tick box exercise.
And as I said, the US Olympic gymnastic doctor got the result of 175 years imprisonment, because this is the kind of therapy that they're really dealing with.
Yeah. So, you know, it's about the worldview, it doesn't touch other aspects that go deeper than just the physical aspect. You know, they look at all the behavior, and they may relate the behavior to something that is, you know, on an emotional sense, but they don't even go further than that. They don't go into the spiritual aspect of it. And plus, we spoke about melanin too. Even, you know, how we are spoken to has a correlation with our with our melanin as well. You know what I'm saying? And even from a psychiatric perspective, when they prescribe us these drugs, they have a diverse effect on our melanin states as well.
Right.
Okay, you're absolutely right.
Basically, what it is, you see, the problem is, they're the cause of the problem. We're going to the people who caused the problem to get the solution. You know, the basic thing that they've done is made us feel we have to go outside our family to feel to be somebody.
That's right.
You know, so we leave our family and go to them because they've convinced us that we are inadequate as ourselves. But you look, most of the things is based on the family, the royal family, the mafia is a family. So basically, to have any strength, the strength has to come from the family. But as I said earlier, you can't go to the cause of the problem to get the solution. Sorry, Theo.
And can I just add 1 second? Talk about family. Even the psychologists are part of associations that are families. Psychiatrists are part of they're all part of organizations.
Okay, come on, Supreme.
I just want to mention 2 things and come off the line.
Yeah.
Previous week, I spoke to Jammers with Lyndon, and he was talking about etymology and the words and really getting into it. One of the words I threw at him, Shem probably knows this one and probably fear, is the word drapetomania, right? Which was put in the dictionary. Because once again a therapist or a psychotherapist was saying in 1851, I do believe, that slaves who were running away were suffering from a condition,
right?
And the cure for that condition was to chop his foot off.
That's right.
And we actually saw that in the film Roots, where Kunta Kinte kept running away. Where they say, well, that's a mental disease.
That's right.
So one of the things that I was actually saying to Jammers as a etymologist is that we need to start having people like him, yourself, to start putting word, sound and power in the universe to counteract what's been going on for the last 400 years. Because if you still look at the other issue, if you look at what we're doing currently now, we still have our surnames of the people that have enslaved us.
That's right.
So we're still, word, sound and power, we're still under it.
That's right.
There's still a lot of us that still haven't changed our name. So when you're talking about identity, why is it not the first thing?
Yeah, good point.
That people go and say, well, I'm going to change my name, because every time I mention the name Johnson or Samuels, or it takes me to that place 400 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm in a mental prison technically. But I don't know it.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about psychology, we haven't released ourselves from it. But I'm going to come off the line because I'm enjoying the conversation. Yeah.
Okay, my brother. Give time for contribution. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. All right then.
Well, let's Theo, and then you can come.
Well, I'll be brief, and then Shen can come back here. And you see, what Jammers what Jammers said was exactly what I was going to say, just put in different words. I mean, it's not to down on Shen, but you see, we don't have to ask that question anymore about whether they are coming from a certain paradigm. We can pretty much take that attitude that Robert De Niro character in Heat had when he said, listen, just assume it all. Assume they've got us down and they know what we're about. Assume it all and then act from there. Too much of this giving the benefit of the doubt to someone who has proven over and over and over again that they don't really have any honorable intentions. So that question, we might as well throw that question out. The thing about the whole idea of what the therapist is supposed to do, and whatever the outcomes that we should be expecting from all of that, then we have to proceed from that point. That the outcomes are not necessarily going to be. You see, they might want to, or the whole idea, if you buy into the idea, someone talked about, what was it, recognition, all right? So you reinforce this idea that the outcomes of going to consult this person is going to be somehow beneficial. And we've obviously seen the results of that. The other thing is to say, well, look, I mean, these individuals who have these titles that you place your confidence in, that have credibility, have been trained in a certain way, and they can spot certain vulnerabilities in whoever comes in to see them, and then because they already have that credibility in the person's mind,
of course,
they can advise some curative protocol or treatment that isn't going to be good. And that is going to result in a whole lot of disruption back in the community. You see, every individual in our community is a gift to the community. Everyone, we all operate according to a social interactions with each other. Once you're implanting, it's like a disease. That's how viral infections work. They go out and carry on infecting. Once you implant, maladjustment within there, if it's not checked, it's going to spread. It's going to affect someone's household. It's going to have reverberations which will go outside and then eventually consume the entire social environment that we're all operating in. And if you work from that basis, then you have to stop that. You have to check that at the door. The same way how, certain people, if you have a club and certain people, there's a door code, you're not coming in with that. Search them at the door, you're not coming in with that, because that safeguards those who are in there against any potential violent outbursts that's going to take place inside. So that's where it has to be. There has to be a perimeter, you see. Otherwise you get, you can. I'm using all these kind of analogies from IT, but then it's a bit like these so-called psychologists and therapists. They're like Trojan horses. They're implanting the code in the heads, and you're going in, and then they can guarantee that you are going to do destruction within your own community because you're not getting into theirs.
True.
You see what I mean?
I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of us who are caught up in this system, though. There's a lot of us who are caught up in the psychiatric centres world. There's a lot of our youth.
Now, you just said something there. Psychiatric. It's a trick of the psyche.
The psyche, exactly. Yeah. It's a trick of the psyche. And there's a lot of our youth. If you look at the amount of youth, our youth who are trapped in the criminal injustice system. There's a lot. They profile them. They don't just profile them as being gang members or people in criminal activity. They profile them psychologically as well, and goes back to the social services. It goes into the adult probation. It goes into the prisons. So that's where we are on a real level. That's where we are, and they will get profiled all the time. And they are, if they exhibit a certain type of behavior, they will be automatically referred to a psychologist.
What do you mean by profile? What do you mean? What's it?
Profile in the sense of if they behave in a certain way, they are already placed in a box. They're pigeonholed, and they will automatically be assessed. And after assessment, if they hit a certain score, they are then automatically referred to a psychologist. They have no say. They actually have no say in that, because it goes back to contract law. Once you've caught yourself into the system, you already contracted yourself in. Yeah, and everything that you will do according to that, and the fact that they've criminalized you already, so everything that you do based upon your criminal label will automatically be seen as criminal. If you're going to be labeled having a mental health issue, anything that comes out of that is in relationship to you having a mental health condition. Like we spoke last week, Buzzy B, he spoke about when he attends these multi-agency meetings and he sees people who have been placed under the Mental Health Act, and they say a certain thing in the meeting because they're genuinely not agreeing with it. The people totally blank them out because they've already labelled them as having a mental health issue. So it goes back to what do we do about it as a people? That's why I said it goes back to the family. You know, how do we prevent our children or our loved ones from getting caught up in a system like that? There's many, I've worked with many male, female, youth, adults who have been caught in the system, and then they also are referred to the mental health.
And I just like to, so the next element is like the drugs that they put in, because you don't put a certain behaviour, they put you in a drug to do that. Yeah.
Certain treatments. So you have the treatments from the Bedlam, is it? I can't remember those old madhouses where they used to treat you physically. Now they treat you mentally.
What does treat mean? What does treat mean now?
A treat is a gift, isn't it?
It's a gift to your mind. So they treat you mentally. Treatment.
So they treat you. You know, you have the trick or treat.
Yeah, to your ment.
And then they trick you.
Treatment.
They trick you and then they treat you.
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah, the side trick.
Side trick.
Then they treatment. Then they treat your mind. Yeah, with the fun element.
So okay, we've got literally about 5 minutes. It's about 5 minutes left.
Wow.
So I just want to just to run in terms of how we can the way forward and how people are feeling right now, because like I said, we're gonna do the next part next week.
Yeah, I think the last part next week is the solutions.
Focus around solutions and
solutions, and hopefully Theo will bring the 9 systems and
yes, I will.
And protocols as well.
Yes.
Exactly, that's going to be dynamic as well.
All right. Okay then. Earlier on, you mentioned the whole thing about the soul, right, and the spirit. And correct me if I'm misinformation from here, but do you say the soul and spirit not necessarily is one?
It's indivisible, it's inseparable, but it has its own entity.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So you have the spirit or the ruach, or the ka, which is basically the spirit, which is the breath. And then you have the soul, which goes back to the soul place.
Okay, you probably bring that next week, because that's fascinating now, right? Okay then. So Theo, just in a sentence. Let's say you get promoted to you get promoted to no.
I can't remember that.
Where you come for the ranks though. You come for the ranks, man. Yeah, come through, Theo.
All I wanted to say was that we'll continue this next week, obviously, because it was interesting there. I'm going to say really quickly. See, a lot of these things are pretty much everything. And when we go back to this whole psychoanalysis and everything that they're doing, you see, chances are almost irrefutable, founded, our principles. You see, just like their academic situation is founded on our principles, their mathematics, everything in their science is all founded on our principles. Yet, but what happens is that it's just like the Bible, for example, where obviously
it's a good example. Yeah, it's a good example.
The feminine principle almost completely eradicated from that, and certain books that are part of the biblical canon have been discarded, and what's left is designed to do, as I said, their cultural work. So when you talk about their psychoanalysis and you talk about their education, you talk about everything founded on principles that were designed to follow the same things Brother Shen was talking about: truth, justice, harmony, balance. the core principles are removed, and what is kept is designed to do the cultural work of someone who does not have the interests of anyone else at heart other than themselves. I know, I'll just say that for now. I'll continue, but obviously we've only got, but there's more. Since we've got more opportunity next week, then I was late today. I'll be a little bit more prepared and more in rhythm to, expound upon those ideas.
Okay,
all right?
Looking forward to it from you next week, Theo. Yes, very good. About 10 seconds. How are you feeling now, my brother?
So basically today we looked at, it's because it's such a vast subject, we can't really, discuss this in so short space of time. You know what I mean? It's very vast. It's something that's continuous.
Okay, fantastic. So the final word will come from the great man, Master Jammers. We don't want quick discussion.
No, man, we are going to come back, my friend, and show you real psychology. With two brandy as well. Yeah, thank you, Chris. Thank you. Dougie, and you've got the show, is it your show?
Yes,
tell people about the show this Sunday.
This Sunday, we're at the Chestnut Community Centre. We're talking about the whole thing about Meet Your Straw Man. Also, we're talking about the role of parenting and gang intervention. We'll be just a little bit about that after the show. So that's again at Chestnut Community Centre, 280 St. Anne's Road. And Jammers will be talking about the whole thing about words. We've linked to the whole thing about the straw man. So that's taking place this Sunday coming at the Chestnut Community Centre.
I'd like to first thank everybody in the studio, Shane, Theo, Dougie, also contributions from Abu, to Galaxy, also Supreme, also Brother Lyndon, he's not with us today, but he's here with Spirit. Everybody, all the listeners, I'd like to thank you. We're talking about identity, and we want you to recognise the power that you have, identify with your higher principles, and the power is within you and your family. Don't go to a plumber to fix a Ferrari. And it's all generated by your melanin. Thank you.